Don't release those 5,000 pages of content that you just done overnight on ChatGPT.
Hi there, welcome to From Ideas to Results. I'm joined by Luke, CEO and co-founder of Simgiant Media, and today we're exploring the hot topics in the world of AI. First up, Google's AI integrations.
Yeah, lots going on. And we've just heard about it from the team. There's lots of things happening in all kind of areas, but a few just maybe to kind of call out more broadly was around AI mode in search. So that's something that's released in the US. It was released in India 6 days ago, and it's essentially moving away from the more standard search engine results page that we've been familiar with for the last decade, and actually moving to what you would probably see as similar to ChatGPT. We can have a much more kind of conversational element to it. What's quite interesting is it's actually, from what I've seen and tested, it's a really rich set of results. You get lots of imagery in there, so it looks really powerful. And again, it's something we've been talking about for a long time in terms of how you optimize to rank when it comes to AI. So that's quite exciting. We're quite looking forward to that, but it will have impacts around clients' performance. So yeah, quite a big topic to kind of to look out for. We've also seen AI Max, again, talk to the pay team about that one as well. What we're seeing, and we've talked about this in the past, is that essentially a task starts here, finishes here. Currently AI does this bit, and this bit. What we're just seeing is we're seeing that change and expand. So AI will take over more of the sort of delivery part of that task, which again, I don't think is a bad thing, because actually it should enable humans to do human things and kind of, make sure that you're doing the right planning and strategy and guidance for the AI, and ultimately then impacting and monitoring the performance and results and making decisions around how to pull the levers that are available. What it does mean is that we have to think about things differently. We have to restructure the way that we would approach campaign development, the management as well, and something that as a business we've been focusing on for such a long time now. So kind of the message to everyone really is, whether you're an agency or not, you're going to have to look at the skill sets, you're going to have to look at the people in terms of the attributes that they have, and look at the way in which that actually rolls out, because it's very different to the past, where you might have somebody that would be responsible for the delivery of all of this. You may not need that role, or that role has to change into something else, which is more around more holistic strategy and planning. But of a number of those pieces that we've seen from Google recently continue that development, half of how AI is changing and how it's part of that production process.
And you mentioned there about Meta as well, and they're moving to that full automation piece.
Yeah, so in 2026, they're talking about the full production of the advertising account will be done automatically. So you point at their website, you give it a brief, and it goes away and kind of produces it, which obviously sounds a little bit scary as an agency or as somebody that might be responsible for running it. I think what that does is predominantly aimed at the smaller businesses, certainly in the short to mid-term, because I think the quality of it will be okay. The automation will create this very, very quick automated setup, which would be fantastic for the small businesses that maybe don't have the budgets for photo shoots and for filming shoots and things like that, which ultimately this system supposedly will now create, but probably not as customizable and flexible and better performance for the businesses that have got those capabilities. It's showing where things are headed, something that we need to consider in terms of how we as businesses adapt, and it just plays into that kind of general conversation of how AI is consuming some of those areas of a job role that historically it wasn't. But it doesn't mean that it won't be a role for a human. It's about how humans using AI can actually succeed and thrive in the future.
That's AI from the business perspective, but from the consumer side, there's a piece around people kind of blindly trusting content potentially and results.
So it's interesting, there's some statistics from Google. I think it was 52% of people who read an AI overview trust it, which is interesting, and I've fallen foul of this one as well, where
Guilty.
Guilty. I was looking at something, and it was stringing two pieces of information together from two different websites and giving a positive result. We've got to be careful, because people are trusting this. I think Sam Altman's recently come out and said people trust AI way more than they should. Slightly concerning, but we do have to remind ourselves, and again, this is just a general message to not just businesses, but I think the younger generation in education that are going through this kind of massive revolution of technology, is critical thinking. The challenge we see at the moment is this overwhelming deluge of content being pushed out there, which is great and exciting on one side, but there the sort of the rigor and the process in evaluation of the creation process, but secondly the consuming of it as well. And I think that is a big topic that we need to look at more holistically, not as a company, but more as a species, really. But again, this also ties back to a recent study that looks at consumers and whether they can identify AI generated content. 72% of consumers can identify AI generated content, and in the 22 to 24 bracket, spotting it nearly 90% of the time. And it said that 41% surveyed said that brands that use purely AI generated content, they have a negative experience towards. So it goes back to everything we've been saying with the content team. It's about making sure that we are producing relevant content that adds value rather than opting for pure AI content. or was I gonna say something else? To make sure it's really good and make sure it's actually adding value to that user. Because we can see now statistically that people don't prefer purely AI generated content. Don't release those 5,000 pages of content that you just done overnight on ChatGPT.
Okay.
Think about actually what you're trying to say to your audience and make sure it adds value.
Just going to delete some pages. Okay, so coming from another angle again then, this one can be a bit more controversial. We see a lot of it online. So from the environmental impact, what's your thoughts on that with AI?
It is a challenge, and there is a lot of energy usage when it comes to AI, particularly when we're talking about electricity. I do think if we keep playing this forward, eventually the limiting factor at the moment, I think, for AI innovation and speed of rollout will be energy, because we just can't produce enough of it at the moment to support the kind of the data centers. I do think at the same time, as you're seeing quite a lot of it online, a lot of people kind of flagging that as a concern and I think there's a few things. Number one, AI probably isn't going anywhere, so we've got to kind of acknowledge that this is a technology that will be around. I think in part AI may also help to solve some of those problems itself, so actually it will through efficiencies, it may help us provide cleaner energy quicker, perhaps. So it might be part of its own solution. But also I think people have to look around, there are other things that you can do within your control that ultimately impact it. And looking at things like, a meat-based dish, as example, is 200 times more impactful on the environment than using AI on a regular basis, like over 50, on a 15 times a day basis. So we've got to acknowledge that. Don't use it frivolously as we should, with all kind of resources. But at the same time, it's going to be here. People need to explore. They need to experiment with these sorts of things as well. And again, a lot of those videos, if they were to do them, actually like film them, think about the amount of time it would take, the number of people that need to do, the travel that they need to get there, the food that would be consumed on the way to traveling it. You put all of that together, it's probably not as big as the AI impact in itself as well. So I think there's a balance, there is a challenge, absolutely, but it's how we approach that and how we can also look at not just AI as the potential kind of bad guy when it comes to environmental factors, how we as individuals, as governments, as bodies can look at other areas in addition to AI, at the same time as also trying to improve the environmental of AI's impact as we go forward.
That's all from us this week. Those are the hot topics in the world of AI. If you found that useful and interesting, please check out the content on the website and of course follow us on social. See you next time.